Now, every offseason, some person somewhere decides that they're going to do, before training camp, a power ranking of every NFL team and rank them up there and say this team's definitively going to be better than this team, and this is going to be 16th best, and this is going to be who's going to win the Super Bowl in the middle of the summer when camp hasn't even started, and it's going to start a war on Twitter, and then everybody's going to get mad or whatever, and it ends up all being kind of pointless, right? I mean, last year at this time, people thought the Rams were going to be one of the 5 best teams in the NFL, and well, look at how they're viewed now. So instead of doing a top list of teams that's based off of projections that are based off intangibles, I thought it'd be a much more interesting thing to do to talk about the teams in these situations in NFL that are going to be some of the most intriguing to watch. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that these teams are going to be good or bad. It just means that they have certain things set up in place that have me very intrigued to keep an eye on them for the rest of the season. So let's talk about the most interesting NFL teams to watch in 2020. The first interesting team I have on here is Houston, because Houston's just been doing some interesting stuff over the last few years. It's a combination of very odd personnel moves. They traded 2 1s and a second-round pick for Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills, which didn't fix the offensive line, but did signify that maybe the Houston Texans are getting really serious about building around Deshaun Watson and that they're going to go all in on their Super Bowl window, make every sacrifice as far as money to make that happen. And then they traded Clowney for a 3rd-round pick because they didn't want to pay him. And then this offseason, they traded DeAndre Hopkins because they didn't want to pay him, even though they just spent all of their future capital on Laramie Tunsil to win now. And this has me in a situation with Houston where I'm just confused on what their direction. It seems like Bill O'Brien is quite content competing for the division and going 10-6 and not really trying to be one of the dominant teams in the NFL, which is an interesting strategy to go about it. And they can most certainly be good because they do have Deshaun Watson still. And despite not having DeAndre Hopkins, they have some pieces around him on that offense. Now some questions are even being asked about Deshaun Watson. Like, how good is he and does he contribute to the issues with the offensive line? Because it seems like no matter what they do to fix it, the problem still persists. But the good news for the Houston Texans and why they're going to be very interesting is that the division is still wide open. You have the Colts, who invested in a over-the-hill Phillip Rivers. You have Jacksonville, who seems to be taking a year off to rebuild. And you have Tennessee, who had a magical 2019 last year, but just for whatever reason, don't feel legit. You know, we don't know how good Ryan Tannehill actually is and how much of that was just people being caught by surprise. How good can this Tennessee team be while being so one-dimensional? Which means that Houston's going to be in that Goldilocks zone for tension to heat up for a head coach, because they're going to be good enough to definitely compete for the division, but just bad enough to where they might not actually win the division and miss out on the playoffs, which is going to cause a lot of tension between the players and the coach, because the coach is also the one making the trades, and he traded the best player not named Deshaun Watson on the offense for David Johnson, who has a injury history that's not preferable, and like a 2nd and 4th round pick. The next team I have down here is a team that a lot of people who watch this channel are going to keep their eyes on anyways because they're Browns fans, but it's the Cleveland Browns. Now, I'm going to keep this brief because if you look at the roster, oh my God, it's an amazing roster. It looks like one of the best rosters in the NFL, but the coaching staff and the GM are both completely new, first time at their job. But oh my goodness, this roster has Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, and Austin Hooper, but it's Cleveland, and the Browns went 6-10 last year with a similarly good roster because of things that just went wrong around the team. Not even injuries as much as it was just dysfunction on the coaching staff. But again, this roster is insane. Oh, by the way, they have Denzel Ward, they have Greedy Williams, they got Grant Delpit somehow, and they also have Myles Garrett. But but, man, is Baker Mayfield going to be better than he was last year? Because if he isn't and throws the interceptions that he did last year, this might not work out. But the roster is just amazing. That's the dilemma. Everything on paper seems like the Browns should be really good this year, but everything that's intangible about the situation gives people pause, which is rightfully so. The Browns have built up that reputation over the years. But I do think the Browns are actually going to be good this year, and I do think they're going to be very interesting to watch in a positive way. But if it goes bad, they're still going to be very interesting to watch. The next team I have here that's going to be very interesting to watch is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for so many reasons. One, you got Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski back on the same offense with Mike Evans, the freak, and Bruce Arians, who has a very good reputation with quarterbacks, especially with what he did with an older Carson Palmer. But speaking of old, we have to acknowledge that Tom Brady is quite literally the oldest person in the NFL. And you might be relying on him to do a lot of the work on this offense. I think Tom Brady works better in a situation where you can run the ball more and kind of limit the opportunities that he has to throw back. That way he has more stamina. That way he can be able to be Tom Brady in the fourth quarter. I thought that San Francisco was a much better situation for Tom Brady, but this is about as far from a San Francisco type situation that Tom Brady could have went to, because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to run Bruce Arians' offense. That's a vertical offense. That's something that Tom Brady really wasn't doing spectacular in New England. His best weapon on offense is Mike Evans, but Mike Evans thrives on deep balls, specifically like 50-50 deep balls, and I don't know how many of those Tom Brady has in him. He's the oldest active player in the NFL. And also, a real question has to be asked about how good Rob Gronkowski is anymore. He kind of was falling off a cliff his last year in New England. Now, he had a really good playoffs that year, but like in the regular season, he did not look that great. He's lost a ton of weight. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to get all of that weight back on. So, like, how much of Gronk is he going to be able to be? How healthy is he going to be able to stay? Even when he was young, being healthy was a huge issue for Rob Gronkowski. I can only imagine with less weight on him and in an older age, that's going to be a significant issue for a tight end. So Tampa Bay, they have Tom Brady at the end of the day. So they could be really good and really interesting to watch in that standpoint. But if they're really bad, they're going to be really interesting to watch, because I don't think I've ever seen Tom Brady on like a 6-10 team. And I'm just intrigued on what the dynamics are going to be like on the sideline if Tom Brady is on a 6-10 team. Now, there are some teams that are going to be interesting, but not interesting enough to put them on this list. The first honorable mention goes to Cincinnati Bengals. They have Joe Burrow. They have a really good supporting cast around him: A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. They made some very strong defensive additions in free agency, and they seem to have all the makings of a very fun team. They're just in the AFC North, which is one of the best divisions in football, so I don't know how much they're going to be able to improve on their win total. But if we're just talking about a team that's going to be fun to watch, I definitely think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be there. And speaking of a team that might not have a great win-loss record, but might be very fun to watch, it's going to be the Arizona Cardinals, because they have Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray can do some of the interesting things that Lamar Jackson can do as far as having the ball in his arm as a runner and also as a passer. Then you have the supporting cast, which is Larry Fitzgerald and DeAndre Hopkins. Very interesting for him to throw to. They can do some interesting things on the ground game. They can do some interesting things through the air. It's going to be all up to Cliff Kingsbury and how imaginative he can get with that offense. But they also are going to have a terrible defense. And I think Cincinnati and Arizona may be the closest thing we see to Big 12 football in 2020. And the most interesting team to watch in 2020 is most definitely going to be the New England Patriots. I don't know how anybody else didn't see this one coming, because they have Cam Newton and Bill Belichick. On so many different spectrums, can you see that being like really positive and really negative? On the negative front, you have two guys, the quarterback and the head coach, who could not be further from each other personality-wise. Bill Belichick is quiet. He is reserved. He does not care about how he looks at any moment. He does not care about the optics of things. Bill Belichick's not somebody who's going to be invested in his brand. He's just kind of a grumpy football guy. And then you have Cam Newton, who does put his work in. He does do everything behind the scenes that he's supposed to do at a high level. But when you talk about everything else that Cam is, it's the polar opposite to Bill Belichick. This is a guy who's expressive. This is a guy who's an expressive and vocal leader. This is a dude who does care about his brand, cares about how he looks all the time. This is going to be completely different. This is going to be a culture clash of sorts in New England. Then just looking at it from a pure football standpoint, we don't take in the personalities of the two players, then you can see where this could be magical. Because you're handing one of the most diabolical minds in football, Cam freaking Newton, one of the most athletic people to play the quarterback position of all time. This guy's a former MVP. He's 6'5", 245 pounds, and he's healthy for the first time in 2 years, which is going to be very interesting to see what Bill Belichick can do. Sure, there's not a lot of defensive pieces left on this team. They have Stephon Gilmore and some other pieces, but they don't really have a ton. They lost a lot in free agency. And yeah, they don't really have that many pieces on offense. But Cam Newton and Bill Belichick with Josh McDaniels sprinkling in some stuff on the side is a combination that could either be extremely deadly on the football field or extremely deadly off the football field. And either way, that's going to be something that you're just going to want to watch in 2020, regardless of how it goes down. And that's my thoughts on who are going to be the most interesting situations in the NFL. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Who do you think are the teams that intrigue you the most? But again, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. And again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.